Inspiration comes in many forms. George Orwell's 1984 inspired Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, Stephen King's The Mist inspired Halo, Arabian mythology inspired the tone and story of Prince of Persia, someone took a look at a gorilla in a theme park ride operator and poof, I was created, hello. Films, television, and books have inspired video games. Video games have inspired other video games, but occasionally something completely unexpected starts the wheels turning in a video game developer or director's brain. Be it a person, a pizza, a conversation, or even criticism. So let's look at video games we all know and love that came to fruition thanks to some quite frankly, dumb things. I'm Rich from WhatCulture Gaming, and these are 10 things you won't believe inspired iconic video games. Number 10. Five Nights at Freddy's was inspired by a kids game about beavers. Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror series that needs no introduction. Taking the horror gaming and facecam YouTube scene by storm, Scott Cawthon's now legendary series came from completely left field, especially when looking at where Cawthon started in the realm of game development. Cawthon had never even considered doing horror before Five Nights at Freddy's. He was far too busy creating Christian video games such as A Christmas Journey and The Pilgrim's Progress. After a handful of non-Christian but still squeaky clean titles, he created Chipper & Sons Lumber Co., a title featuring beavers, resource management, and oddly creepy beaver models. These models were so unnerving, in fact, criticism of these animatronic-like characters was flung Cawthon's way, and that spooky spark kickstarted the creation of Freddy Fazbear & Co. Several games, books, merchandise deals, and a feature film adaptation still in the works later, Cawthon's millions all came from this eager beaver. Number 9. Pokémon was inspired by bugs and a hat. The ongoing global phenomenon that is Pokémon had a very humble beginning rooted in childhood curiosity and being pissed off about a game not doing what you wanted it to. Lead developer Satoshi Tajiri stated that the core idea of collecting a team of creatures to do your bidding was inspired by 1987's Dragon Quest II, as he wanted the defeated dragons to join your party and fight alongside you. Another thing irking Tajiri was the fact he was chasing a rare in-game hat, which his friend actually had 2 of. With no means of transferring the hat to him, the ideas of sharing your findings with other players was submitted to memory. The third pillar of Pokémon's inspiration came from Tajiri's fascination with bug collecting as a child. He was so obsessed with insects, other children lovingly named him Dr. Bug. All these little inspirations all resulted in the earth-shattering Pokémon Red and Green in 1996 for the original Game Boy. 2 separate versions with exclusive Pokémon led to link cables and trading being a core mechanic, and it's a formula that's remained basically unchanged to this day. Sadly, you can't trade hats in Pokémon. Valve stole the idea and created Team Fortress 2 instead. Number 8. Star Fox was inspired by Thunderbirds and a Japanese shrine. The 16-bit era of video game history is one packed with incredible titles, blast processing, and the war between Nintendo and Sega heating up. The Super Effects chip established the SNES's almost unknown 3D potential, and the killer app Star Fox helped the Super FX chip take off. However, back when developing the game, Shigeru Miyamoto wanted a striking appearance that would make the game stand out, so he asked the developers and the artists to make the characters look like puppets. Miyamoto was a huge fan of Jerry Anderson's legendary 1965 television series Thunderbirds, which inspired both the puppet aesthetic but also the use of flying machines instead of tanks, which the development of Star Fox originally ran with. Another huge part of the Star Fox formula is flying through gates and rings, inspired by the Fushimi Inari Taisha shrine close to Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto. To enter the area, visitors must pass through numerous gates called Tori. Passing through these gates symbolizes that one is entering a sacred place. Miyamoto loved the idea, so it ended up in Star Fox. Finally, the shrine in question is actually dedicated to the fox deity Inari. Fox McCloud is a fox, 2 and 2 make 4, etc. Number 7. Mortal Kombat was a failed Universal Soldier tie-in. It's relatively common knowledge that Mortal Kombat's Johnny Cage is based on Jean-Claude Van Damme. However, not many know that the original Mortal Kombat actually began production as a video game adaptation of the Van Damme flick, Universal Soldier. Van Damme himself was even going to portray himself in the game, with the developers digitizing images of him in fighting poses, similar to how the final Mortal Kombat character models were produced. However, Universal Soldier wasn't well received and underperformed at the box office. Subsequently, Van Damme left the project. The devs still liked the idea and wanted it to become an ensemble title of fighters from various iconic movies, though their Universal Soldier-less budget meant they weren't getting any rights anytime soon. Instead, they tweaked the iconic film characters into the now iconic Mortal Kombat characters we know from the franchise today. Number 6. Pac-Man came to be because of pizza and a sailor. Pac-Man is the most recognizable video game and video game character ever. Sorry, Mario. Originally, the character Pac-Man was going to look drastically different. The creator, Toru Iwatani, wanted the character to drive a craft around the mazes in-game, though when taking a long look at a pizza missing a slice, admit it, we've all done that, he saw a much simpler design which was easily recognizable as a head with its mouth open, and would be a damn sight easier to animate too. Another factor present in the gameplay of Pac-Man is the ability to eat the pursuing ghosts once Pac-Man consumes a power pellet. According to Iwatani, he came up with the idea of a power-up enabling the hero to turn the tides against his enemies after watching Popeye. Bluto would be busy beating Popeye to a pulp until he chugged a can of spinach, then Popeye would be doing the pulping. Iwatani wanted strategy to play a big part in Pac-Man, which was a rarity at the time, and his implementation of a limited number of timed power-ups to take the fight back was the perfect way to get players to think ahead on how to complete a level. Number 5. Street Fighter II's design was based on a Charles Bronson film. Even though the first Street Fighter was a huge success, Capcom really wanted the sequel to go above and beyond. To make it more exciting, the developers drew inspiration from the 1975 film Hard Times, which revolved around a street fighting competition. How apt. In the movie, Charles Bronson plays a drifter trying to earn cash by taking part in illegal fights. Two of the standout brawls take place on a dock and in a factory, which Capcom copied into the title for Ken and Zangief's fights respectively. At first, players knowledgeable of Hard Times saw this as a coincidence. However, upon closer inspection, it was clear the way the characters pose, punch, and kick were traced straight from the film. Even the locales and background characters were nigh on the same. Even then, the original title for the film was The Street Fighter, which makes all of this even more apt and sort of weird. Number 4. Ocarina of Time was heavily influenced by a Disney story. The Legend of Zelda is one of the most beloved and celebrated franchises in video game history, and 1998 Ocarina of Time is widely regarded as one of the greatest video games ever produced. The series has drawn inspiration from folklore, personal experiences from the developers, other games, and literature, but Ocarina itself takes many cues from the iconic 1953 Disney animated feature, Peter Pan. Sounds a little far-fetched at first, but hear me out. Link and Peter Pan wear green clothes and wield swords. Pretty obvious one. Moving on. Both characters play wind instruments, Peter with his pan flute and Link with the ocarina. Both have a fairy companion, Tinkerbell and Navi, and they both live in the forest with ageless children, cue the Lost Boys and the Kokiri. Not only that, but time plays a pivotal role in both stories. Pan lives in a world where children don't grow old, and Link travels in time using the Master Sword. More, you ask? In the Water Temple, Link must face off with his doppelganger Dark Link, an analogy of how Peter Pan wrestles with his shadow in the darling children's bedroom. There are so many parallels you can draw, you're probably surprised you didn't notice them sooner. Number 3. Super Mario only exists because of a landlord. Super Mario and Pac-Man really go toe-to-toe in terms of recognizability, but he's up there, more so in the modern era of gaming compared to the dot-guzzling yellow pizza. As of 2019, over 330 million copies of Super Mario titles have been sold, which is a lot of gold coins, let's face it. What's even crazier though is the thought of Mario never existing. In 1981, Nintendo hired out a warehouse to work on a game revolving around Popeye and Bluto. Bet you weren't expecting to see them again on this list. But when Nintendo couldn't actually secure the rights for the characters, Popeye and Bluto evolved into Jumpman and Donkey Kong respectively. Whilst working on the game, the warehouse's landlord, Mario Segal, visited periodically to collect the rent. Since Nintendo were struggling with money, which is tough to imagine really, the company's then president, Minoru Arakawa, promised to dedicate the game to the landlord in some form if he was allowed more time to pay the pressing rent. Segal agreed, so Jumpman became Mario. The rest is history, basically. To think, if this world didn't have landlords chasing down rent, one of the most iconic money-making faces wouldn't exist, and modern gaming might not either. Next time your landlord comes a banging on your door, be a good egg and pay up, okay? Number 2. Tekken was inspired by nothing. So far on this list, we've seen weird-looking beavers, incomplete pizzas, and Popeye. Boom! There he is again. But what inspired the iconic fighting series Tekken? Actually, nothing. So why was it made? The basis of Tekken was actually a demo program designed to test 3D models at Namco. Once these models worked, they would be shipped off to their respective games to have their mechanics added, placed into the game world, narratively, etc, etc. Whilst developers at Namco were testing and texture mapping 3D models using this testbed of sorts, they saw potential in a fighting game using this software. Namco also acquired a swathe of developers from Sega, namely talent who had worked on the successful Virtua Fighter. Post-initial release, Tekken spawned a number of sequels, crossovers, merchandise, and 2 films, and it's one of the most successful fighting video game franchises in history, second only to Super Smash Bros. Number 1. Echo the Dolphin was inspired by NASA, drugs, and aliens. NASA, Drugs and Aliens isn't only the title of Jules Gill's first heavy metal jazz album, but it's also what inspired the almost acid trip that was 1992's ECCO the Dolphin on the Mega Drive, or Genesis if you're stateside. Designer and producer of ECCO, Ed Annunziata, was inspired by the work of John C. Lilly, a countercultural scientist. Back in 1961, NASA realized that if we did one day come into contact with aliens, how will we communicate if they didn't speak any Earth-based language? They looked into the idea of making an animal speak, hoping that developing this idea might help them if they needed to communicate with an extraterrestrial life form. NASA figured dolphins would be a good start for the experiment as they are incredibly intelligent creatures, so they hired John C. Lilly to assist since he was already researching dolphin communication. After spending many unsuccessful years trying to get his dolphin Peter to speak, Tilly suffered from migraines and took ketamine to ease the pain. After overdosing, he hallucinated the existence of the Earth Coincidence Control Office, or ECCO for short. They contacted him claiming they'd control all earthly matters. This inverted commas contact shook Tilly to his core. He felt he'd been almost torturing his dolphin in horrific experiments, so he abandoned the project. Ed Annunziata confirmed that the dolphin ECCO wasn't named after Lilly's ECCO, but the aliens and dolphins mix definitely played a part. And there we have it, 10 things you would not believe inspired iconic video games. Did any of these blow your mind? Sound off in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to WhatCulture Gaming here on YouTube if you haven't already, and ring that bell if you're not wanting to miss out on anything. I've been Rich, you can follow me on Twitter at PickupChangeToe, and we will see you tomorrow.